Welcome, everyone. Today, we are going to be debunking the creationist Nathaniel Jeanson, who I'm so lucky to have co-hosting this with me today. Dr. Dan Stern-Cardinal, who might be the internet's local expert on debunking Nathaniel Jeanson. I mean, your series, certainly the best on YouTube. Your series of debunking Nathaniel Jeanson is incredible, and I still am in awe that you actually read through his published books chapter by chapter and painstakingly analyzed their content and debunked it. So I'm so happy to have you on the channel tonight. Dr. Dan, why don't you introduce yourself and your channel?
Hi, thank you for that very kind introduction. Yes, I am. One of the things I do is I'm the Jeanson Whisperer. So my channel is Creation Myths, which is right. I can get my hands right. It's right there. So what I do is I deal with creationism of all flavors: young Earth, old Earth, intelligent design, whatever version of creationism you want. On my channel, I deal with it because I am an evolutionary biologist, and creationists lying about evolution makes me angry. So this is how I handle those emotions. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about how they're wrong about everything they say. And specifically with Jeanson, yeah, I've done reviews of his books, Replacing Darwin, and then Replacing Darwin Made Simple, the one for like a younger, less technical audience. And then also the more recent one, Traced, which was super bad. And I actually got to have a conversation with Jeanson about this nonsense one time when he did kind of a call-in show a few years ago. And it's one of the few kind of public engagements that Jeanson has ever had with his critics. They keep him under wraps over at AIG. So, there aren't many opportunities for people to actually like ask him questions and make him defend his work. So that was really exciting too.
And that's exactly why I wanted to have you on specifically tonight, because like you said, you're one of the few people that has ever conversed with Nathaniel Jeanson. They keep him in the vault, secluded,
right. Keep him. Science. Yeah. He's busy. And, look, he's got a lot of science to do. He doesn't have time to talk to people who are completely unfamiliar with his work, who have never read his books, who haven't read every blog post, paper he's put out in AIG's fake journal, the Answers Research Journal. Oh, I'm sorry. I have read every word of his output multiple times. Yeah, I've spent way too much time with Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson's output in my life.
That's exactly why you're perfect for tonight's debunking. We're not going to go over some of the material that you've already tread so well, like his previous books and material like that, up to like, I think Traced came out in 2022 or so. So we're going to be dealing we're going to be dealing with an interview that he did just a couple weeks ago. So some fresh Jeanson content. One thing that should be mentioned is that of all the young Earth creationists that I'm aware of, I think Nathaniel Jeanson might have the best credentials, the best credit. He is an actual PhD cell biologist from Harvard Medical School, right?
Yeah, it's cell and developmental biology from Harvard. Yeah. So he is a legit PhD. And after he did it, let's be clear, he admitted out loud. He said these words out loud. Like, one, he said he basically went through the motions and said the words he knew he needed to say to get the degree without like believing any of the parts of it that involve evolution, which is all of biology.
Yeah.
Like, there's no field of biology that like you could just remove the evolution and it still works, like, just to be clear. But then the second thing is, after he graduated, he got hired by it was originally ICR, Institute for Creation Research. And in his hi, meet our new research dude article interview that they published on their website, which you can still find, it's still out there publicly, he says something to the effect of, and I thought to myself, how can I use and abuse my training to affect eternity? And it's like, okay, so we're just going to lie. We're just straight up, we're just saying out loud. We're just saying the quiet part out loud. I got the letters after my name, and now I'm just going to lie.
Okay. So he actually said, how can I use
and abuse my training? Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That is just so on the nose.
Oh, yeah.
You think it may be more subtle. Like usually Jeanson is quite subtle.
Yeah, no. He said the quiet part with a megaphone. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez. And you know that, like, having gone through a cellular biology and developmental PhD program. He understands the science. He knows it. He knows it enough to pass a test. He can regurgitate these facts. He's aware of how the science actually works. And he knows that what he's doing here for his lay audience that doesn't have a PhD is just lying about the science.
Oh, he 100% knows. Yeah. That's I'm gonna just a little shameless self-promotion right here. I have a video on my channel called Nathaniel Jeanson Thinks You're Stupid. And it's just looking at the ways that like one of the things with creationism, and in particular young earth creationism, is that they have no respect for their audience. They treat their audience like idiots. And there is no example of that is more stark than Jeanson. Jeanson makes the most inane arguments that he knows are wrong because he knows his audience will buy them when they come from somebody with his credentials, and he can get away with it to his target audience, which, by the way, his target audience is not like convincing the scientific community, right? His target audience is young earth creationists, specifically to give them things they can say and they can lean on to reinforce their belief in young earth creationism.
With that being said, let's go ahead and start. This is the introduction to the video here, and let's just watch just the highlight reel here they have to try to hype it up.
Yeah, let's see.
Unbearable.
Anything new.
Wow. Yeah.
Darwin made his arguments. They've come up with new forms of it, but it's the same logic. We've refuted that. Now that we have the Bible to say, okay, what are the right answers? It's just gone forward by leaps and bounds, not because of anything special about me, but I'm like, it's almost like shooting fish in a barrel. You've got the Bible and you can start picking off the answers one by one in rapid succession. And maybe the most revolutionary aspect of all this is,
Hey, and welcome to Zero Compromise.
Well, wait a minute. What's the most revolutionary that I see what they did there.
It's such a cheeky little edit right there for a cliffhanger to try to get your attention.
Can we just appreciate how right off the bat they're like, Darwin has ideas. That hasn't changed much, and now they've been refuted. It's like, all right, feel like we're just kind of sneaking some premises in there that maybe won't hold, but okay, I see what you're going for.
Yeah, it's like they're saying all this as if it's just basic, accept common knowledge.
Yeah, we know Darwin's been refuted. We're just moving on, established. Let's talk about the next thing now, right? Like, guys, like, what are we doing?
Yeah, maybe they could maybe be a little bit less ambiguous and stipulate that Darwin's been expanded upon, not refuted, with things that Darwin didn't know about, like genetics or
I think
partitioning. The list goes on.
Oh, I think it's so much worse than that. They're not even playing the evolution is different from what Darwin said. They're saying evolutionary theory in the modern world is not significantly different from what Darwin said, and it has been refuted. Like,
oh, that's even worse. I was being too charitable.
Yeah, no. It's worse than you thought.
Today's video was supported by Modern Atheism, a new channel for counter-apologetics that has really been crushing it with hilarious animations like this one of our beautiful boy William Lane Craig. Yet, it also delivers sound and well-reasoned arguments against religious apologetic nonsense. Seriously, go check out this channel and subscribe to Modern Atheism.
You stand for truth in a world that falls for lies. I'm Patricia Angler, joined here at the Creation Museum by Jessica D. Ford, aka JJ. Hello. We have Rocket Rob Webb with us.
Hey guys.
And we've got a conversation for if you're a young person wondering, maybe I'm interested in going into science, but I don't know as a creationist if I'm going to be accepted and able to produce good research. Can creationists even do good science? Okay, before we go any further, I just want to say, like, this is such... this just gives me the ick. Like the whole way that they've set this up of trying to lure young creationists into science to follow in Jeanson's footsteps gives me the ick. But I do want to say that you can do good science as a creationist. Like, your science is not about creationism. Like, young earth creationism is not science. You can't do science about it because your science will just debunk it. But if, say, like James Tour is a good example, right? He might not be a creationist, but he's devoutly Christian, but that doesn't interfere with his synthetic chemistry at all. Like, he's a good synthetic chemist. He's doing good synthetic chemistry because it doesn't interact with his young earth creationism. It's not
creationism, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You can still, you can be a creationist and do good science, but you cannot do good science about creationism.
Exactly.
That's the problem. Right. By the way, just a quick note about our panel here. I don't know the two people in the middle, but Patricia Engler on the end, she wrote a book for AIG called Prepare to Thrive, which was about preparing people for college and like the challenges they will face as creationists in college. And in one part of her book, which at some point, pie in the sky, eventually I'm going to have a review of this book on my channel. And in one chapter, she describes a biology class, and she seems to think that the point of the biology class was to like provide evidence for evolution to the students in the class. She was like, to my surprise,
teach biology.
Right. She's like, to my surprise, they didn't present any evidence for evolution in this class. Like, when I teach my intro to evolution classes, I teach a 100 level and a 200 level. Right. One for non-majors, one for majors, like just basic. Here's what, evolution is about. I'm not trying to convince my students that evolution is true. I want them to understand how evolution works and how we know. I'm not like going to be like, and here's how we know, and here's how we know, and here, like, she's just coming in like either genuinely expecting like a laundry list of just like, here's how we know evolution happened, which is not what you're going to get, or she's dishonestly presenting it as what it should be, and then it's not because those crafty biologists know they can't do that, right? Because they know it's all lies anyway, right? I'm not sure what is actually going on under the hood there, but the way she presents like the purpose of a college level biology class is completely disconnected from what the actual purpose is.
Yeah, that's a very like oddly confrontational way of viewing education, or at least like she seems to think that the goal of the class is to persuade you, instead of just educate you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is not how it works, and it tracks with like the AIG us versus them mindset, right?
Exactly.
The secular world, look at it at all. Hold on, we have got an amazing cutting edge conversation for you. Who are we talking to today, JJ?
We have round 2 with Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson. He is a research biologist here at Answers in Genesis.
And as always, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and share this episode so we can get this message out to as many people.
Do that except for me and Dan's videos.
Do it for this episode. That one's got enough. That one has like 20,000 views. All the rest on this channel don't have that many. It's this thing called Zero Compromise. It's like some AIG podcast thing. But this one in particular really went. It got like 20,000 something. So,
and to your point earlier about like how Jeanson should be doing this, if you actually was interested in doing real science, you're not going to go on a creationist podcast to like publicize about your results. Like, you're going to just publish them.
Try to publish them, or look. And if you think like the publishers are unfair and they're going to censor you or whatever, go to a conference, do a poster at a conference. Go to the Evolution conference every year, and they, there's a poster session. Do a poster, do a 10 or 15 minute, whatever talk. Like, they'll take you. Go for it.
Yeah. Nathaniel Jeanson, we want to see you at an Evolution conference.
Bring it. I've been saying this to every creationist I've talked to lately. I've been saying, you know what? Sure, forget publishing. Go to a conference. Go to the Evolution conference and just do a poster. Just stand there with your poster during the poster session. Make your case to real scientists. Try. I dare you.
As possible. So with that, thanks for staying on with us for round 2. Dr. Jeanson, he's so awesome. We had to continue the conversation. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Let's pick up where we left off from the last episode. Make sure you guys also check out our last episode if you do not see it. Amazing conversation that we had. Let's talk a little bit about your
cutting edge research.
I was like, what's the word?
The funniest part of this entire thing for me is that them calling his research cutting edge research is played like a joke. It makes them all laugh. Like, watch this. As soon as they call it cutting edge research, it lands like the punchline of a joke.
Cutting edge research.
Cutting edge research. I was like, what's the word?
Also, sizzle.
Cutting edge research.
We want to talk about a revolution really that's happening in science that is under the radar. It's a quiet revolution, but it is quiet at the moment. And for the next generation, it could become very loud. So evolutionists have set the conversation for so long. We're about to set a totally new one in ways that I never expected 15 years ago. So this is what's coming.
All right. That's exciting. All right. I'm curious. Tell us more.
Yeah. So I'd say, just to give a sense of, I didn't expect to be where I'm at. Book that's coming out spring, Lord willing, 2025, on a running title will be The Lost History of North America. before the Pilgrims. I grew up knowing next to nothing about the pre-Columbian Americas, and it's
We're getting a new Jeanson book. I'm going to have more reading material. God darn it, I'm going to have more reading material.
Oh, I feel like this is actually going to be like the worst book yet for reading that we're going to get into.
We'll get to it a little bit later. You talked about the ick a few minutes ago. There's some stuff later that gives me the ick, and we're gonna get there.
It's really
yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah.
creation science research that is opening doors I never thought we'd walk through. I don't think anyone thought we'd walk through it on multiple angles, social angles, human interest angles, scientific angles. So just, I guess, to set the context, I knew growing up.
He is really hyping up this research.
Can we also just appreciate the bajillion cuts that were in that sentence? That is the most Frankenstein sentence. I want to know what he said in between. I know I'm being petty.
Release the full uncut version. We need the Jeanson cut.
Come on, give us the Jeanson cut, AIG. Let's do it. I know I'm being petty, but like that was there were at least like 3 cuts in that sentence.
So I grew up in a Christian home, grew up homeschooled, grew up hearing Dwayne Gish, Henry Morris, Ken Ham. I knew what our opponents were saying about creation science. It's anti-science. I knew they say we don't make testable predictions. That's sort of the technical jargon.
We're going to call that technical jargon, dude.
And I think that my personal theory is that he's referring specifically to a very certain individual here with this, and I think you might know who it is.
So in fairness, that's been his shtick since replacing Darwin, is the testable predictions thing. That's, if you read Replacing Darwin, he's all about we're big boys doing science over here in creation land, and his predictions are nonsense. And they're inconsistent. And then when he says they're confirmed, they're actually not, because
we are going to get to his predictions tonight. But yeah, I just thought it was so funny that he called testable predictions technical
jargon. Those are the big words, folks. Technical jargon. Yeah,
it's a buzzword, and it's a buzzword Nathaniel Jeanson uses to market his own material.
I will say I use the phrase testable predictions in the second class I teach, when I teach intro bio to college students. The second day we talk about the scientific method, and testable predictions do come up in there.
So it's such technical jargon that you have to have an entire day.
Day 2. It's a small part of day 2 for intro bio for college freshmen. Yes.
Nice. Okay, let's get back to it.
That's in the legal court decisions. So if you're wondering why am I going to public school, I'm not hearing about this 1987 court decision, 1982 federal court decision. That's why it's basically forbidden, in a sense, to hear about creation science in the public.
Yes, because this pesky little thing we have called the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment. Yes.
Public school system, it's considered religion, and they say it's considered religion because supposedly we don't make testable predictions. Hang
on. No. It's considered religion because we don't make testable predictions. No. It's considered religion because of what you said at the beginning, when in that little teaser intro bit, when he's like, "We get our answers from the Bible." That's why it's considered religion, sir. Come on.
Yeah. Also, religions make testable predictions, Nathaniel. The Norse religion predicted Ragnarok, but you can test it by waiting around to see for Ragnarok. I mean, his own religion makes testable predictions about the end of the world coming any day now. So
I mean, look, that right there. There's stuff that he says that kind of like shades of gray. What he just said, blatant lie, straight up, the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if their standard for me would be, if I want to have a place at the scientific table, a chance to speak to public school students in the science classroom, I have to make a statement that in the future we can go out into the field, we can go out into the lab and do an experiment to test whether it's true or false. And that's dangerous, of course, because what if you're wrong? And then what?
I like how you think that's dangerous. That's an interesting word that I think gives you a little bit of look into his psychology here.
You're absolutely right. It's very insightful that he considers the possibility that a prediction made on the basis of young Earth creationism might be shown to be wrong. That is dangerous, and that's an interesting. It's an interesting choice of words, and I think you're right that it's very revealing. Also, again, I'm sorry I'm being petty, everybody, but the cuts in the middle of the sentences, what is happening in this video?
there's actually a lot going on here that I think is pretty revealing about his entire approach to his career, right? Because he says, in order to be taken seriously as science and get in front of students in public classrooms, what did he say? He said, you have to say that you can, in the future, test and make these testable predictions. Like
that you can.
He doesn't actually test any of the predictions. He
Don't
just
have to be.
says them. And then
doesn't have to be correct, doesn't have to have data, doesn't have to have a coherent theory. We just have to be able to make the testable predictions, and that gets you in the door. Dude, the textbooks are the most like solid established stuff. You can't just burst onto the scene like the Kool-Aid man, make some predictions, and expect to be taught in 8th grade science class. That's not how it works.
Dan, like forming a hypothesis that makes a prediction is step one, right? That's step one. And he's like, wait, but I made my testable hypothesis. Why aren't I in the science textbooks already?
Gold standard, Grayson. Testable predictions, gold standard.
It's
gold standard. That's all you got to do. Actually, and I'm just going to quibble a little bit. I would make it like step 3, maybe, depending on how you.
Okay. Step 1 observations. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, right.
Early step. Before.
Yeah, it's in there, right? It's the step you do before you actually do any science, right? It's right before you collect data.
Yeah. It's a very early step that he's like, oh, I did it. Put me in the science textbooks. I've got science now.
The good news is, to make a long story short, that's been my career for the past 15 years. I joined the Institute for Creation Research 2009, was there 6 years, and I'm 9 years, going on 10 years here at Answers in Genesis. And the first task I was given at the Institute for Creation Research was to come up with a biology program. And my first thought was, well, let's find the questions that have been unanswered. Also dangerous when you're thinking apologetics. So how admitting unanswered questions, what are you doing? Well, that's the first.
Just admitting
very insightful.
There are things you don't know is dangerous. Just think about
that. Definitely on the up and up with the science here, when the first thing you have to do, finding unanswered questions, is, quote, potentially dangerous. That's, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Step of science, and then finding the tools to answer them. So for me, in the realm of biology, which is what I was tasked with, it was all revolving around the question of the origin of species, and spent maybe 7 years on that. That led to this book, Replacing Darwin. The new origin of species, it's called Replacing Darwin because this idea of testable predictions was in my head. I knew for many years the evolutionists have said it's not good enough to criticize evolution. That's not.
Okay, so, and just to repeat, if anybody wants a thorough chapter by chapter debunking of that textbook, go to Dr. Dan's channel. It's amazing.
I did that book, Replacing Darwin, in the earlier days of my channel, before I had a nice recording space and lighting and such. So the production value was awful, but it was very detailed, and it was 2 live streams to go through that book. So it's probably like 3 hours total. And man, there's so much wrong with that book, including some truly egregious figures that Jeanson claims form a he's got like data points, and then he does like linear regression on all of them. And let me tell you, some of those lines are not lines. You can do linear regression on any data set and it'll give you a line, but some of that stuff was not lines. It's really bad.
Some real back alley statistical.
It's real. Also, can I just be like, once again, super petty, because, you know, I feel like Nathaniel and I have a special bond. So I feel like I can say this to him. Nate, find a shirt that fits, dude. Okay. Like, can we, you gotta find, come on, man.
All right.
Sorry.
Well, I don't know if he will heed your advice, but that is solid advice if he is actually watching this right now.
He's not. Although he does, I'm convinced he 100% Googles his name. So who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. Let me go back to play.
Me saying we should criticize evolution, and there's lots of strong arguments against evolution, but they've said and put it.
Why are they showing the Big Bang right there?
I don't know what that was. That was weird. Got some J.J. Abrams stuff just
Big
in the
Bang
middle.
Transition, go.
In the middle of the sentence, and then it just goes back to the sentence that he was saying with no.
Yeah. What were they covering up there with that edit?
Can we go back like 10 seconds and just do that bit uninterrupted?
Yeah.
I'll keep my mouth shut.
Called Replacing Darwin because this idea of testable predictions was in my head. I knew for many years the evolutionists have said it's not good enough to criticize evolution. That's not me saying we shouldn't. We should criticize evolution, and there's lots of strong arguments against evolution, but they've said and put it in legal documentation, not enough. You got to give us a better replacement model. And it's not just a flippant way. I took it very seriously. It's
there's just so many cuts, Dan. It's really difficult to even keep track.
It's so distracting.
I think that was like 4 or 5 different sentences mashed together.
It's so distracting, and I have no idea why they're doing it that way, because it'll be like 3 words and then a cut and then 3 more words. That it's so distracting.
So you can find in this book predictions for which I did not know the answer. And the happy news, of course, is this fulfillment of predictions. Part of
oh my God, you can. I can't even. The fulfillment of predictions. Oh, traced the fulfillment of predictions. What can you even say?
we can say a lot about Traced. We could say about how the main data set he uses, because he doesn't collect his own data ever, because he's not a real scientist, he's a fake scientist. He just uses other people's data. And one of the 2 data sets he uses in here isn't a real like actual data set in Traced with actual like numbers of mutations. It's a figure, it's a pedigree essentially, where it's population. And then he identifies father-son pairs, and there's a scale bar showing that the branch lengths are proportional to the number of mutations. So he does like a CSI zoom and enhance with the scale bar and the branches to figure out the number of mutations, and that's how he gets his mutation rate from that one paper that he uses. Yeah. And also the authors said, hey, we didn't do any quality control because we were looking at structural changes, not single base substitutions. So the mutation rate that you document is indistinguishable from the error rate of the techniques that we used.
His science is so bad
Yeah,
for
it's really bad.
a Harvard-trained cellular biologist.
Because he's lying. Because he's a liar. He's a lying liar who lies. Like, let's be clear, folks.
Yes, apologetic significance. One of the predictions I made, and what has been my focus in bringing back to that pre-Columbian Americas element, one of the focuses of my research, just because you go where the data are, that was a hard lesson of graduate school, is you can have the best ideas, best questions, but if you've got no tools to test it, you're stuck. So the annual research budget or annual budget of the National Institutes of Health is $48 billion. Wow. Most of it is research, and most of it is interested in health research. So human genetics. We've got hundreds of thousands of DNA sequences for humans, and because we're taxpayers, we get free access to it. I can then sit at my desk and analyze all that. And so that's why this book is focused on human history. And the prediction I made in replacing Darwin is, and it's not some earth-shattering one, you just think about the biblical model where we start with Adam, they're fruitful and they multiply all the way down to Noah. Of course, the world goes corrupt. God destroys everyone but 8. Mm-hmm. So humanity essentially restarts with 8 people. Human civilization is wiped out because it's a global flood. There's no remnants of the pre-flood world. The pyramids are not pre-flood. They're post-flood because they would have been erased by a global flood if it was pre-flood.
Okay, there's a lot that was said right.
I'm sorry. I just every time, I don't know why young earthers on purpose bring up Egypt, because one of the things they love to say, and this is not my field, there's other people, Grayson, you know, people like Dapper Dinosaur are way more qualified than me to talk about this stuff. But this I know. One of the things young earth creationists love to say is how, all around the world, they all have flood myths. Global flood wiped out everything. You know who probably would have noticed the flood and yet doesn't have a global flood myth? Was the ancient Egyptians.
Oh, yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah, because
right in my face.
they would have had to have built those pyramids very, very quickly after.
Very quickly. It
would have been fresh on everybody's minds, and we have a lot of Egyptian mythology written down. Kind of weird how no global flood.
But also lots of flood stuff because of the Nile and like the cycle of flooding that it does regularly, right? So like they're not strangers to this phenomenon, but also no global flood.
They were actually recording annual flooding in detail almost every year.
It's very unusual, especially when you consider, and this is something in replacing Darwin that Jeanson talks about, like ice ages and that kind of stuff. And when you factor in the timing of the ice ages, you go right from like flood, ice age, and then within like a couple hundred years, you're in like Middle Kingdom Egypt. And like, man, make that timeline work, please.
That was a very, you know how they say that like history is like made in a day? Like in this instance, in the creationist timeline, it literally is like the entire ice age in a week.
Yeah, it's I think the ice age is, so someone's going to correct me on this, but the entire ice age only lasted like it was like a century or two, because you don't have many years to work with here, right? And then Old Kingdom Egypt, like forget about it. And then whatever the period is between Old and Middle Kingdom Egypt, there's like nothing. That's like boom. And then right away you're into Middle Kingdom Egypt, which now you've got a basically continuous historical record up to the present at that point. Yeah. So you can't futz with it once you get there. But from flood to Ice Age to Middle Kingdom, you got to fit like a whole lot of documented stuff in there, right? Including when people talk about the pyramids, they're obviously talking about the Great Pyramids. There's a lot of pyramids that are older than those, a lot older than those that are still standing, plus a bunch of other monuments that predate the true pyramids. You have to fit those into this teeny little it makes no sense. It's not my field, but like, come on.
It takes a long time to build a pyramid too. It's not like you could just build all of these in a few years.
Well, that was because the aliens helped. That was how they got those big rocks up. Yeah, it was the aliens.
I missed that part in Genesis.
Yeah, that was that was the aliens helped. That was, come on.
All of civilization that is therefore from Noah, post-flood. If that's true, then we should see stamped all over our DNA the echoes of civilization. And primarily this would be migrations. You can, and it's a technical argument, see.
Okay, wait, real quick. Here is probably one of my main issues with Jeanson's entire approach to this, right? He mentioned it earlier about how he sees it like trying to use genetics to support biblical history. He said it's like what, shooting fish in a barrel or whatever. He's just like, the Bible makes all of these claims about history. It's like, how do you even pick which ones to go and then try to see if you can make the genetics fit that mold? Like, his approach is just ass backwards on this. Where he's like, okay, we have the 100% true objective telling of history. Now, how can we force what we're seeing in the genetics to fit with that history? It's the complete reverse of how you should do science.
Yep, 100%. And
real quick, my big question for him is, okay, so he's saying, oh, well, we should expect to see these migrations. We should expect to see these founder events like after Noah's flood. It's like, my big question is, how can you differentiate the founder event from Noah's flood from any other founding event or like founder effect in human history? How can you differentiate your biblical migrations from just the migrations that happen in history? Like, he has no way of telling this is from biblical history, this is from just non-biblical human history. He cannot differentiate that.
He thinks he can with mutation rates, and he's wrong. Wrong about everything when it comes to mutation rates. The other thing to note here in terms of this being a backwards approach to doing science is that Answers in Genesis has a statement of faith, and if you do not sign and adhere to that statement of faith, you are not welcome to work at or write for Answers in Genesis. So you are literally not allowed to make any research findings that contradict their statement of faith, which, Grayson, I don't know if you've ever tried to publish in a scientific journal. They don't generally have statements of faith where if you disagree with the statement of faith, you're not allowed to publish in that journal. Generally not how it works.
It's just so ironic given how much these people complain about how they cannot publish their ideas because they're being persecuted for their faith, when literally in all of their own organizations they persecute people from publishing because of their faith.
Yeah, if you don't toe the party line, you are not welcome in the pages of Answers Research Journal. And there have been instances where like people have wanted to do like critiques. And I don't know if specifically it was Answers Research Journal. There's the Journal of Creation. There's a few other ones, but there was a thing. This was it was years and years ago at this point, where somebody was like, hi, I'd like to write a rebuttal or a critique of this particular thing that you published. And they went back and forth. And ultimately the journal said that you're not allowed to do that because you don't, adhere to our statement of faith. Like, okay, well, this is clearly, an above the board operation going on here, right?
I'm beginning to see a lot of parallels between Christian Science and Christian love. No hate like Christian love.
Yep.
The population rises and falls. So the pre-Columbian Americas, if you dig into it, the mainstream community will talk about there being a massive population collapse. There should be a smoking gun of that. It was actually a key step in me trying to figure all this out. We should be able to answer questions like what happened to the Romans? What happened to the ancient Egyptians?
Which Nathaniel Jeanson absolutely cannot answer with his methods.
Nope. Nope,
Like-
he gets timelines all messed up. So there's I'll tell one quick example of this. There is a very famous, well-preserved Stone Age specimen that was found in northern Italy. It had a particular Y chromosome haplotype in its genome when we sequenced its DNA. I think it was the R1b haplotype.
The Stone Age.
It was
in
and
North Italy, it was R1b.
it was R1b, and this is a famous specimen. Like, it has its own Wikipedia page. Like, this is a famous, well-documented Stone Age, well-preserved site, right? And so there was this human remains there. They were able to recover and sequence the DNA, and it was a Stone Age specimen. And this particular genetic marker, this haplotype of the Y chromosome, Jeanson says that it migrated into Europe in the early, somewhere between the early AD period and the Middle Ages.
Yeah, it was like in his book, I think he said R1b haplogroups arrived in Europe between like 1100 and 1400 AD.
Yeah, exactly. And the specimen from northern Italy that we have that's R1b is a Stone Age specimen.
Like literally Neolithic.
Like it's just like I cannot convey to the audience enough just how, like, not even close his output is to, like, being reasonable, being accurate, being reflective of, like, forget like interpretations, just like basic facts about things.
Yeah, Dan.
Because this is a guy who wrote a book about human migrations and human history based on Y chromosome sequencing, and he didn't mention one of the most famous preserved samples of the human Y chromosome that is informative about when humans arrived in Europe. Didn't mention it once. Like, I cannot convey how awful this work is.
Oh, Dan, it's actually, it is even worse. Like, just that one example of Stone Age R1b humans in Europe is enough to debunk his claims about how, by his own reworkings of mutation rates and phylogeny and how he traces it back using his method in traced, like, he thinks that the R1b only gets there in the medieval era, and we have so many R1b haplotypes from Rome, from the ancient Greeks, from old Europe before even like the influx of genes from the Caucasus. Like, there are so many examples of R1b humans in Europe thousands of years before Nathaniel Jeanson's methods tell us it should even exist.
Yeah, right. Because it's not just the fact that the group that had R1b migrated, it's that based on the mutation rate that he will say calculates, it had to first appear de novo during the migration into Europe in the Middle Ages, right?
Yeah.
It's bananas, folks.
This is exactly why I was laughing earlier when he held up the book traced and was like, all my confirmed predictions in this book. I was like, my dude, like, the entire field
It's
of
so
ancient
bad.
genetics is nothing but one enormous debunking of Nathaniel Jeanson's entire career.
It's awful.
Let's continue.
Once their political empire fell? What about the people? All these sorts of questions. Anyway, long story short, we've made predictions. We're seeing them fulfilled. That's led to more predictions because that's good science. New research raises even more questions. It's been wildly fruitful, and it's opening up new windows into the past that I never imagined, including what happened in the Americas before Columbus. I never learned it. And now we've got tools that we've never had before, genetics. And let me tell this story real fast too. Just I had to convince myself that we could go this direction because what I'm about to say is revolutionary and politically incorrect.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this is, yeah. Mhm.
It's revolutionary, Dan. It's going to revolutionize everything.
It's also politically incorrect, folks. Gird your loins.
There we go.
One of the first things I did when trying to make sense of, I was looking at male inherited DNA, Y chromosome, technical detail, but that's just the field I was in. And I had read a book since moving to Kentucky. We have a local library, Boone County Public.
So many cuts. I know we keep saying it, but
I know,
like,
it's distracting.
it is unreasonable the number of cuts in this video.
What is going on? AIG, if I signed your statement of faith, I will edit your videos like better than you. Like, I will do a better job. This is really bad. Like, you could, like, I don't have to officially, but like, let me help you. Let me
Public
help.
Library has a decent set of books. So they had a book 1491 by Charles Mann, secular guy, but talked about this idea of there having been a massive population collapse in the Americas. I thought, okay, well, where is the smoking gun of this? This is a lesson of graduate school. Take what you know, beat it to death till it yields all of its secrets. So worked on it. Turns out the smoking gun is quite obvious if you know how to find it. And without going into the details, the point is I first had to convince myself we had a strong genetic echo of post-Columbian history. Got to start with what you know. I know there's been a collapse. So where's the smoking gun? Found it. That changed how we could figure out how time is stamped on the genetic tree and the DNA.
Okay, so like this sounds like it actually might be good practice, right? Like go from what you know, start the pre-Columbian history of Native Americans that we know, and see if you can trace that into the genomes of.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Real scientists are doing that. There was a book published on this like last year that showed how the history of Homo sapiens in the Americas goes back like 20,000 years. Like there are real scientists doing what he is describing.
Whoa, Dan.
Like,
it all sounded good until that 20,000 number, and that's how I knew it couldn't be real science because that's older than the Earth.
Right. Obviously, there weren't Homo sapiens crossing the Bering Strait land bridge 20,000 years ago because the Earth didn't exist then. Right. Obviously, that wasn't happening. Yeah.
DNA tree, family tree, where the beginning is, all that. And then I could work my way backwards in time. And that's where the dominoes began to fall, where there's been one of the things that appeared then from this genetic analysis was there have been multiple settlings of the Americas, not just one. Of course, it's not 15,000 years ago. It's within the last 4,000 years, but there was another.
That was a trick creationists love to do. They effing love to do this. They go, they say like, hey, here's a thing that I think, and also this is supported in the mainstream community and like multiple settlements of the Americas. Fact check, probably true. It looks like there were at least 2 migrations through the northern route across like the Bering Strait. There was probably an inland migration and a coastal migration. And it's possible there was some crosstalk between South America and Polynesian populations, right? So we've got multiple avenues where genetics are getting into the Americas, either directly through migration or through interbreeding and gene flow, right? And, so like,
all in the last
that's true. But then, did you see the trick he did there? It's so crafty. Did you see the trick? And he's like, oh, they say 14,000 years ago, but we know it was closer to 4,000, right? He does just that teeny little bit, like, here's all this well-supported stuff, except for this one little bit. And then we just keep going like that's nothing. But like that one little bit, that's the whole game, right? Trying to sneak that in there. And like another example of this is the famous mitochondrial DNA bottleneck paper. The paper, the title is something like, Why Should Mitochondria Define a Species? And creationists love to cite this paper because it finds a mitochondrial bottleneck across many different animal species, and shows that in evolutionary time, most animal species are relatively young. And what creationists like to do is they point to the flood and say this is indicative of the flood bottleneck. What they ignore from that paper, which is a god-awful paper and there's a million problems with it, but let's just assume it's all 100% correct. What they ignore from that paper is those bottlenecks that those authors document are separated by hundreds of thousands of years, and they go back 200,000 or 300,000 years. So that's not going to work for your flood story, folks. But then what creationists will do is they'll be like, look, all the animals had a bottleneck over the last 300,000 years, and that's evidence for Noah's flood. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you just skipped the important part right there, guys. You just skipped the part. And that's what he just did the same thing.
Yeah, like essentially cherry picking evidence to make it seem like it supports your worldview, even though the evidence clearly directly falsifies your worldview.
Yeah, I like this part. I don't like this part. So I'm just going to pretend this part doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
But also, let's also just stipulate that there's physical evidence of human settlement in the Americas that far predate the young Earth timeline, including one of the most beautiful pieces of evidence is a series of footprints where it's a juvenile and an adult, and it's the 2 sets of footprints together, and then it's only the adult set of footprints for a little bit, and then the juvenile reappears. So what happened is the adult picked up the kid and carried them for a little bit and then put them back down. And we have those footprints, and they're thousands of years old. It's like,
There was initial post-Babel settling, maybe several. Genetically, I can see there was a settling right about the same time that the Huns went into Europe and overthrew the Roman Empire. There was a migration of Central Asians in.
Okay, wait.
I know. We just had
I'm already lost.
Yeah.
He's saying
Hang on.
the settling of the Americas at the same time of Attila the Hun.
Which Attila the Hun was 700s.
It's like the 5th century, or like the late 400s.
Late 400. Attila the Hun. No, Attila the Hun was later, wasn't he? Because that was still like the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths. It was like the 400s.
Yeah, Attila the
right?
Hun was the one that went into Europe and knocked into the Goths and the Visigoths and sent them into the Europe.
So he must have been even more recent than that.
Yeah, no. So like the Huns that he's talking about, the Hunnic migration into Europe was 5th century AD. So he's like way off base for any Native American peopling of the continents for any of the migrations there.
Oh yeah, yep, you're right. You're right. Attila the Hun was the 400s. Yeah. You got
the Americas and overthrew whoever was here before. There was another migration about the 900s.
Wait, overthrew who was here before? Like, wait, who does he think was here before the Native Americans? Like, what?
Go back a second. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm confused about that because I thought only the Mormons thought that. Okay, let's go back. Let's
see what.
Genetically, I can see there was a settling right about the same time that the Huns went into Europe and overthrew the Roman Empire. There was a migration of Central Asians into the Americas and overthrew whoever was here before. There was another migration.
Yeah, so he thinks the Native American populations of today, which came from Asia, he seems to accept
Central Asia. He said though.
Central Asia is really
that's not right.
Not Central Asia, but like
no.
Okay, maybe if you want to say like Far East. It's like Siberia region, okay? It's not Central Asia. But
yeah, it does Central Asia. Central Asia is like Uzbekistan and the Caucasus.
Yeah, I was trying to be charitable, but like
no, there's no way because if you're gonna say Central Asia, that generally means one side or the other of the Caspian Sea, right? So you're looking at the Caucasus, right over there, or you're looking at like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and all the other ones around that, right? All the way stretching. Maybe you could stretch it over to like Kyrgyzstan, right? But once you get into like Mongolia, you're not in Central Asia anymore.
Yeah, I cannot. It's not really excusable. But even if I would just want to pretend I didn't hear Central and he just said Asian, then okay. But even at that point,
you're so much nicer to him than I am.
He's saying that this occurred at the same time as the fall of the Roman Empire. And I'm just really curious. He says, replacing who was ever in the Americas before.
Because this would have replaced the people who were there. No, wait. I thought he was separating those out. That there was the Attila the Hun one, and then there was somebody else after that from Central Asia.
I think, Dan, that he might be implying the Nephilim. I guess this would all be post-flood, so it's not. But it's really hard for me to keep track of all the crazy ideas. Like,
this is what happens, folks, when you try to condense 30,000 years of human history into 4,000 years.
I mean, they talk about human giants and Nephilim, and the Mormons have whatever they got going on in the Americas. It's hard to keep track of all these people's mythologies.
About the 900s of thousands, which again was another time of people moving in Central Asia. Most of us are probably descended from that Central Asian movement, which is a whole other story. And that's given rise to also the Algonquin peoples like the Delawares, the Black.
They just did a cut where it was the word and then the next word was that. And each of those words was its own cut. Grayson, what is happening? Who is editing this video and why do they hate Nathaniel Jeanson?
We need to release the Jeanson cut.
I want to see the Jeanson cut.
I've got to see all the things that he was saying here. But this is really interesting to me because I think that this is what he is talking about with R1b, because most Europeans today are R1b. Like I am R1b in my Y chromosome. And he seems to be saying here that they say, most of us are descendants of this population that moved from Central Asia in like the 900s to early
1100s.
The 1100s. That's what I think he's saying is the original R1b.
But that's pre-Mongol, right? Because the Mongols were a little.
So in the actual real life history with actual ancient genomes, this work was done by like David Reich at Harvard. So Jeanson really should know better.
No excuses, Jeanson.
And the actual R1b like spread in the Yamnaya incursions into Europe around 3000 BC. So it originated before 3000 BC and spread into Europe around that, like 5,000 years ago, basically. So absolutely just totally blowing Jeanson's entire career out of the water just with that one data point.
Feet, the Cheyenne, the Arapaho, so many others. I think in Wisconsin, the Menominee would have been a Wisconsin tribe. That's where I grew up. So they would have been descended from that migration as well. And maybe the most revolutionary aspect of all this is I'm finding agreement between what I'm finding genetically and what the peoples themselves are saying. So I grew up, you all probably grew up the same way. If I said, name for me an indigenous account of where they came from, not taught that in school. And I think because most of the mainstream community treats it as mythological, or it's a bit condescending. Well,
I hate so much what Jeanson is doing here, where he's highlighting an actual problem in academia.
Yep.
And he's trying to like make it seem like, oh, the creationists are the only ones paying attention and getting validation here. When in reality, like, there's a huge movement in science and archaeology and anthropology right now to honor those indigenous voices and listen to their accounts and take them seriously. That's a huge movement going on in science, not creationism.
Yeah. You've got freaking Nathaniel T. Mayflower over here telling indigenous populations like what their actual history is. And it's just like, this is the part I alluded to earlier that gives me the ick. Everything he's talking about when he talks about like, I respect populations and it is so this whole thing that he does here is so distasteful because there, like you said, there is an entire body of scholarship. There is an entire scholarly movement to address the shortcomings in the relevant fields. This guy is not participating in that. He is not participating in it.
This is like almost stolen valor to some degree. Like the fact that like he's highlighting an actual problem that is like people are trying to resolve this in science and academia today. And he's trying to like claim that it's actually the creationists that are the only ones that are protecting the indigenous people.
Oh, yeah.
These scientists trying to discredit them. Like, it's just like reeks of white saviorism, and it is
that is exactly the phrase that was in my mind. Yup, 100%, and that's why it gives me the ick, and I hate everything about it. You hit the nail on the head.
Let's see if we can stomach a little bit more of this, because
so
you're
bad.
not going to stop.
It's not written. Fine, I understand academic standards, but there was one document that was written, it seems, and it was rejected as mythological, as a fraudulent, as a forgery. And so there's been this long-standing marginalization of what the peoples themselves have said where they came from. Lo and behold,
that is all true.
Which is true.
It's true.
That's a good.
Genetics comes along.
You know what?
In a young earth frame.
Let's just give Jeanson credit where it's due. He's identifying and promoting and stating a real problem. Good. Thank you.
Now, see, wait, Dan, you
don't.
I was giving him too much credit. Now I think you are, because
I'm no. I'm just saying what you said, that he's identifying a real problem. But here's the thing.
Yeah, but I think the reason why he's doing this, the reason why he's saying these things, is nefarious. I think he's really cynical, and he's just trying to like have some sort of score some rhetorical points and make it seem like he's the magnanimous one. He's the one that's listening to diverse perspectives. No, he absolutely is not. He disregards all of these Native American stories as myths because they're not Christian.
Because they're not Christian stories. Yeah. And if he took this seriously, if he actually believed the importance of reconciling these different historical narratives, he would have the motivation to do the science well, which, let us remind our viewers, this man has a PhD from Harvard. He knows what's what. When he makes a mistake of the magnitude of the errors we have talked about, he is lying. He is being dishonest, right? That's what he's doing here.
Framework, and it starts confirming what they've said, even though it's oral. So again, I understand skepticism, but it's the young earth model that comes along and confirms what they've been saying, and in a sense returns value and dignity to them. And also,
God, that's just so it's just so bad. And like again, he's trying to take credit for this, for the young earth model that's doing this, but there are legitimate scientists and archaeologists and anthropologists doing this work that he's describing like here. Like, I remember There was a Canadian indigenous tribe where they just found out it's the oldest known confirmed oral tradition. There was an oral tradition going back thousands of years, all the way back to the last ice age, where these native people they said the world froze over everywhere, and there was only one island that was safe to live on. And they had this rumor about this island. They went back, and these scientists found ice age settlements on the island and showed the effect that everywhere else
wasn't frozen. So cool.
And it's like,
beautiful.
Oh, those are not young Earth creationists. That was 14,000 years ago.
Right.
And those were real scientists doing that work. So this is not the young Earth creationists that are validating indigenous oral traditions and stories.
It's so offensive. Yeah.
So opens up a whole new tool to understand the past. So now I can tell you empires that were here before, the names of the people, because the Indians said so, the Native Americans said so, but who overthrew them, and begin to reconstruct a history similar to what we learned for Europe. So
also, I have to point this out, because he is lying by omission here by he's saying, oh, well, we can just listen to these Native American oral traditions, and we know their histories, and we can trace that back in the DNA. If Nathaniel Jeanson actually listened to Native American oral traditions, then he would hear like how the Hopi have a tradition about how humanity like emerged out of a cave, like in the Four Corners area of the United States. Like most Native American tribes have a tradition where people emerged from subterranean areas in their own local area of the continent. Like,
right.
I visited Wind Cave, which is where the Lakota people and several other neighboring tribes think the first people emerged out of Wind Cave. And I visited there. It's actually really, really cool because it's an enormous cave system where the opening is only about yay big. And so it's like there's a constant stream of air that, because of the differential in pressure, it's just gushing out like this intense wind coming out of this hole. So I went there, and they're like, yeah, people still to this day believe that this is where humanity originated, is in Wind Cave. And Nathaniel Jeanson is just like, yeah, my young Earth Christian creationism has corroborated all these Native American stories about their history. It's like, dude, they have very, very different histories than your young Earth Christian history, Jeanson.
Yeah, it's...
That's about all you can do, is just exasperated sigh is about it.
and you'll see as we play this video, and Grayson, I think you should just let him go on his white savioring for a little while, because he does this for a bit, and it just like, what are we doing here, folks?
It's genuinely hard to stomach, but Dan and I will try to manage.
We're gonna do it for you, folks.
It lifts it out of obscurity into mainstream, in a sense. So much so now that I've got contacts in 30, 40 tribes, been invited to some of their meetings, talked to some of the elders, which again, not necessarily, they have an indigenous worldview, not a Christian one. There's many anti-Christian elements to their current practice, but
you could almost say that he's just taking advantage of them.
It's now the young Earth worldview that is giving them value, giving them their history back in ways no one else has been able to before. So never anticipated this 15 years ago when I started in creation science, developed a biology program, but we followed the data where it led. And it's opened up this whole new vista into the past and looking forward to the future. All sorts of opportunities, people coming along now. There's so many more things now to being a creation scientist than just pushing back against evolution. I'm grateful for all that's been done. I still endorse all that. There's still some work to be done, but I feel like the evolutionists haven't really come up with anything new.
Wow. Yeah.
Darwin made his own.
Okay, let's pause right there. The evolutionists haven't come up with anything new.
Okay, so I just got to tell everybody here, because I don't know if I stipulated this already in the stream, but Dr. Dan, you're an evolutionary biologist, a practicing evolutionary biologist, right?
In fact, I am, yes. I teach this stuff professionally to college students. I update my course materials every year. When there's stuff that is relevant to what I teach, which is evolution and lots of other stuff, I am constantly updating and revising my materials. So to hear somebody sit here with a straight face and say that there hasn't been like anything interesting, anything new in evolutionary biology in a while is, I hear that and I think, here's a guy who doesn't know what he's talking about.
So when was the last time that you published anything new?
Earlier this year, actually, Grayson, thank you for asking. My friend, Dr. Zach Hancock, and I co-authored a paper on evolutionary biology. It's had to do with mutation accumulation and distribution of fitness effects. And in addition to clarifying some misunderstandings about an important component of evolutionary theory called Fisher's fundamental theorem, we also showed that some creationist ideas are nonsense and talked about some strategies creationists use to try to Trojan horse their way into legitimate scientific literature, which is funny, but there are other creation scientists trying to do that. Our friend Nate here is not one of them. He doesn't even try. I have a low opinion of a lot of creationists. I think I have the lowest opinion of all of Jeanson, because there is no example of a young Earth creationist who is credentialed, whose credentials are relevant to the things he is doing. At least, it's not, being a developmental biologist and a cell biologist is not like right in that wheelhouse. So to be fair, there are a few people who are like closer, but not that many.
Yeah.
And of all of these people, I will tell you, in my heart of hearts, if you ask me and say, you line up all the creationists with PhDs in front of me and you tell me liar or uninformed, and you go down that line and make me sort them, Jeanson is as far on the liar side of that spectrum as you can get. This dude is lying to everyone's face.
There really is just no excuse for the things he says.
Arguments, they've come up with new forms of it, but it's the same logic. We've refuted that, and now that we have the Bible to say, okay, what are the right answers?
Yeah.
It's just gone forward by leaps and bounds, not because of anything special about me, but I'm like, it's almost like shooting fish in a barrel. You've got the Bible, and you can start picking off the answers one by one in rapid succession. So without a $48 billion budget, we can make remarkable progress, and there's so much room for people to join this.
Remember how Nathaniel Jeanson makes all these predictions, but then doesn't actually do any follow-up research to test any of them?
He's explicitly stated that other people need to test his predictions, and it's an innocent until proven guilty kind of situation there.
Like, I'm thinking specifically about the predictions that he made about the San people in Africa and how they should have such an exacerbated mutation rate, and then just conveniently never went to Africa, never went
to test that prediction. And that was like, it's 2024 as we sit here having this conversation. So when he made that prediction, that was like almost 10 years ago.
Yeah. And he's made absolutely no attempt or tried to encourage anybody else to test that prediction.
No attempt to see, is there actually a higher baseline mutation rate among the populations where he says there should be? And
I have a feeling why not, Dan. It's because it's too dangerous.
It's because it's too dangerous, because what happens if the mutation rate is the same?
Then he would be wrong. No.
I heard the phrase growing up, it's just an exciting time to be a creation scientist. It's even more exciting now, whether you're in history and science and biology and geology, the opportunities to understand and advance our knowledge about the world, to completely reverse the narrative about creationists being anti-science. I've monologued, I realize, but I'm excited about this. So
that's awesome.
Good. I like this.
That's where we're at right now, and it is very exciting. It's hard, it's challenging. The educational system we talked about in the previous episode is very set against this, but there's so many cracks being blown wide open. Rush through them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like you said, you start with that biblical framework.
Yeah, I mean, let's just listen a little bit more, because I think he's going to offer a little bit more word of encouragement, and then we can talk about this despicable monologue he just went on.
To fill in those gaps of that missing history. So that's what's so exciting about it.
Absolutely. And there's probably young people that are excited, like, by some of the things you're just saying. They're like, how can we get involved? We want to come be mentored by you and be the next scientist to go carry this research forward. Yeah. So if there's a young person listening and they're interested in coming to learn more and how they can get involved with this movement, what would you recommend to them?
There's another.
Oh God. I just need a break for a second before we hear this answer he's about to give. I mean, this is just like the fact that they're trying to use this platform, and you, like you said before, this is one of the most popular videos on this particular channel, and they're trying to use that to try to encourage young people to stealthily go into science, fake your way into getting a degree, so that then you can use your credentials, use and abuse to exactly quote Jeanson, in order to discredit actual science and push your religious agenda. I mean, this is sick. This is despicable.
Also, can we just appreciate cracks are being blown open? It's your job to break through those. What is he talking about?
What cracks?
Because here's the thing. As somebody who, like, I spent 6 years in grad school, and I've been into creationism stuff as long as I've been into evolution as an undergraduate. Those two things have always been together because of how I got into this. And like, you talk to people who are in the field of evolution. When you're in grad school, you go to conferences, you give talks, you talk to a ton of people who are in the same broad field as you are, right? I'm doing viral experimental evolution. Someone over here is doing bacterial experimental evolution. You've got plant geneticists and this and that, da, 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 da. You've got all these people doing all these different things in all these related fields. And you say to these people, when, you're done talking about whatever goes on, it's like, hey, do you see this dude from Answers in Genesis? You see what this guy Jeanson said last week? You see what he wrote about? This is like, you talked about this in your talk that you gave at that conference last year. Now he's talking about this. You see how silly this is? And you know what what reaction you get when you do that?
Probably, huh?
Who? Answers in Genesis? Is that do they have the Ark down in Kentucky? Is that them? Those silly with the Ark. Yeah, do they have like biologists there? Yeah, like, oh yeah, no, they have like a real guy who does like genetics and tries. Really? Oh, that's funny. I didn't even know they existed. That's hilarious. 99% of practicing biologists have no idea who Nathaniel Jeanson is. They have no idea of the work he's doing. They have no idea about these cracks he's blowing in evolutionary theory. And you know why that is? Because he's not trying to share his work with the scientific community. He knows what it takes to get ideas out there and get them accepted in the scientific community because he has a legitimate PhD from a legitimate institution. He has published papers through the real peer review process. Presumably, he has given talks at real scientific conferences. So he knows exactly what the process is and what the steps are to make your case to the scientific community. And since he has graduated with his PhD from Harvard, he has done precisely zero of any of that.
You know what he has been doing, Dan? He's been coming on to podcasts like this and self-describing his own research as revolutionary.
Yeah.
Blowing holes in the facade of mainstream science. And he's been saying, oh, any day now, this next young generation that I'm training is going to overturn the entire consensus in the field. And meanwhile, as you've correctly pointed out, he's just a quaint little joke for most actual scientists. Like, he's not actually publishing anything.
I wouldn't even say he's a joke for most scientists because most scientists have no idea who this guy is.
Fair.
Like, even, you take somebody who like actually revolutionized a field, whether you agreed with him or not, people know who that person is, right?
And they published in a
they had to like show up and make their case, which again, I'm trying to get this out there. You know what, creationists? Put up or shut up. If you got the goods, you know what? Like, go to the evolution conference. You don't have to give like the keynote address. Do a poster presentation. Put a poster in the poster session and just talk to people as they walk by your poster, right? Usually they have like booze at the poster session, so it'll be fine. No one's going to like care. Just do your poster and like pretend to try to get your foot in the door, because what Jeanson is describing is something akin to like Einstein with relativity, right? He really is, or like Morgan with chromosomal theory of inheritance.
We all remember when Einstein had his famous 1905 year when he went on all those different podcasts and talked about his research that finally introduced relativity on the podcast.
And he didn't talk to any other scientists in the field at all. Yeah, right. It's so insulting for him to present to his audience that he's like this brave truth teller kicking down the door of the scientific community,
doing literally
over here
innovative research.
Yeah, right. Which he admits he doesn't collect any data. He looks at public data sets and misrepresents published papers. He doesn't have any data of his own that he's ever collected. Okay. Like, I cannot, as someone who has actually done all of this for real, it is infuriating to listen to this man just lie to his audience about what he is doing. And that's what he is doing. He's saying, look, I'm over here. I'm the brave. I'm Galileo. I'm kicking down the door of the consensus. I'm changing minds over here, right? That's what he's saying. And then over here to the actual scientific community, he might as well not exist.
Yeah, he's not publishing anything.
He's not even trying.
We're getting a program going to have summer students. Like I said, it was through Bob Jones initially. I had another one this past summer who is of Chinese descent. I said, I'm not touching East Asian history right now because I'm preoccupied with Native American history. But if you want to work on this, because she can read Chinese.
Nice.
So she was lining up a bunch of the written records to be able to then compare to the genetics. Because again, that's going to be, I think, shooting fish in a barrel. There is a long extra biblical documented record for Chinese civilization. And again, if the Bible's true, or given the record of history, we should be able to line up very easily the genetic record of East Asia with the written record of East Asia, which would itself be a very strong apologetic argument. Again, it's a positive argument. This shouldn't be happening again if what our opponent's saying is true. Well, we're not doing science. Well, why does it keep lining up? I mean, please
Right.
explain that.
It literally doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't line up at
because
all.
I just want to be clear, folks. What he's doing in order to make it line up is what he does is he takes a literal family tree from the Bible. He takes a family tree and he overlays it on a phylogenetic tree. Now, a phylogenetic tree is a genetic history of populations that is inferred from the existing sequences, right? So you look at an existing group of sequences, an existing population or set of populations, and you reconstruct the history based on the pattern of variation and the documented rate of mutation accumulation. Now, what he does is he treats it so that whenever there's a branch point in the tree, that's like a father having kids. And like so he takes a population thing and he makes it an individual family thing. And like it causes me physical pain, people. You can't do that.
I'd
They're
really love
different things.
if
Because Grayson, like, a phylogenetic tree is based on the long-term accumulation of mutations in the population. It's called the substitution rate. It's the rate when something changes in the DNA. At what rate does that change achieve fixation? Which is to say, everybody in the population has that mutation, right? Or that particular allele or genotype or whatever, right? That is a different thing from when you're looking at familial relationships. And Jeanson conflates the two. And he said to me that one time we got to talk, he said to me directly, quote, I'm using the mutation rate as a substitution rate.
Oh no. Yeah,
I want to just, for anybody who has never done phylogenetics, doesn't know evolution, like the basic, like those are two different things. Mutation rate is the baseline rate at which mutations occur in a genome, right? And we measure that in a very specific way. It's mutations per replication. Every time you copy your DNA, what is the rate at which mutations occur? The substitution rate is the rate at which mutations achieve fixation per year. Those are two different metrics. And one of them, the substitution rate, is almost always a lot slower than the mutation rate because most mutations never achieve fixation.
And Dr. Dan, we have empirical measurements showing that these rates are empirically measured to be different.
Yeah. And I brought this up to Jeanson. I said, hey, here's a thing that directly shows that your measure is wrong because testable predictions, if your mutation rate equals the substitution rate, then here are two populations and we know the date they diverged and it's within the last few thousand years. So we all agree, right? We don't have to worry about young Earth and not, right? It's all within documented history. Yeah. And, you know, I've done this math. I have a video on my channel where I actually did the math. Here's Jeanson's prediction. Here's the data of the actual number of mutations. And he's way off. And I presented this to him and his excuse, again, his exact words to me to explain this discrepancy, quote, wonky things pre-flood.
Wait, is that some technical jargon for you?
That's some technical jargon, yeah, from Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson, Harvard PhD. Wonky things pre-flood. Folks, this is why I have no respect for this man.
Yeah, like I've heard sometimes creationists label things as rescue devices. That's the most rescue-y rescue device I've ever heard.
Wonky things pre-flood. Yeah.
And it should be just pointed out that as broken as Jeanson's model already is, this is the model that he's tried to like mash to fit the data. Like if you were actually to use all the data sources we have to do what Jeanson is doing, like the model would be even worse. Like he is excluding Neanderthal DNA, and that breaks his model even worse than it's already
so bad. This is the good version of the argument.
You don't even want to know if we actually include all of the ancient DNA that we have, how bad Jeanson's models and his so-called predictions actually are.
It's almost literally unbelievably bad. Like you try to explain to other biologists, no, he actually tried to do that. And they're like, no, he didn't. He didn't. Come on. He didn't try. Like, it's bad.
Man.
So there's an apologetic element there, but there's also the fun make discoveries. So I never learned anything about the Pacific before Europeans arrived, 1500s, 1600s, that sort of thing.
Like this whole interview, he's just been like, I never thought about any people groups other than my own my whole life until like
and literally and like another example, there's a whole book on that. There's a recent book. It was really good. It's called Sea People. It's about the history of Polynesia and the settlement of the Pacific, and it uses real data, not fake young earth creationist data.
There's lots of, and I've got contacts right now. I've got a community leader among the Puka Puka people who want to start advancing the research. And so what's our story? And there's lots to be uncovered there. I'm anxious to line it up with Indigenous Hawaiian history. You can think about how we teach, and I'm also working on trying to develop.
You can't line it up with Indigenous.
Those were also, that was like 3 sentences put together right there.
Yeah.
The first half of that sentence and the second half of that sentence were 2 completely different sentences. He just changed gears halfway through.
And like he can't even pronounce the name of these people without laughing about it because it sounds silly to him.
Yeah, right.
Like, this is the guy who's going to be giving a voice to indigenous marginalized people. This guy.
Yeah.
Curriculum too, changing curriculum. You think about how we teach, let's say, U.S. history. There's often the U.S. colonies, the British colonies part. We add on part of the Native American side. Maybe we talk about the slaves. We now have the tools to tell all 3 stories in much more fullness than we could before because of the Young Earth model. So we've got written records and
just because of the Young Earth model tacked on at the end, just barf. God, we already said everything that was wrong with what he just said, but I just had to
In Europe, you can line up with the genetics. We're now making lots of discoveries about Native Americans and say, here's their backstory. So when the Pilgrims met, but now even the slave stories. I can't remember even how many African Americans have come to me, done tremendous work on their genealogical history, more than anything I've been able to do, and often then hit the roadblock.
Yeah, which is like any amount of work. That's more than Jeanson's been able to do.
He hasn't done,
of slave trade. So I can trace to this plantation and then the records go dark. And mainstream science doesn't have the answers. Mainstream science, just like with Native Americans, is rejecting the answers. I've got a textbook in my office about African history written by a guy, might be now retired, in the UK, one of the UK universities, and talks about the Bantu expansion. So much of West and Southern Africa is part of a language group called the Bantu. And his comment in the book is, we thought for many years that the Bantu expansion happened in the last few centuries because the indigenous histories, the genealogies of the African tribes only go back that far. But now, thanks to archaeology, we know it happened 2 millennia ago or something like that. Well, the genetics I'm doing...
The Bantu expansion happened like a few hundred years ago, not a few millennia ago. Like he doesn't even know like the consensus. Like this is in the AD, like period. But this is after Jesus. Like, so, come on.
Lines up exactly with...
I don't have anything to add. I just can't.
So we can, which means then it's, again, value added back to them, or return to them, dignity returned to them, but also then their accounts are a tool to understand and continue the story of African Americans and say, I can take your history beyond that, and I can say what kingdom your ancestors were part of and what they did and what great exploits they had.
Their accounts are a tool for Nathaniel Jeanson. But not the kind of tool that he's portraying here. I think he wants to use their stories for maybe different than just validating their voices. And
if you read Traced, he goes into the history of the African continent in a little more detail. And in theory,
in theory, again, preoccupied with Native Americans. So there's lots of opportunities. I might go to Bob Jones and say, hey, do you have an African American student? Or an African student even, because there's some of it's going to be bound up in languages I don't speak.
Okay, maybe don't go to Bob Jones and ask him for an African American student. Maybe don't do
That's
that.
a good point. So for people who are unfamiliar with the history, Bob Jones was one of the famously one of the last schools to desegregate, and then I want to say into the 90s had a prohibition on interracial dating in its like official student handbook conduct stuff.
Oh, that's
like,
a big oof.
Yeah. It was like this is actually tied up in the whole right-wing, culture war, Christian nationalism thing, because in the wake in the 70s of losing the fight over segregation, there were a couple of years of where the Christian nationalist right didn't have like a cause célèbre. And what they settled on was abortion. And so the modern anti-abortion movement actually grew out of the failure of the anti-segregation movement, and all those same players just changed gears. So invoking Bob Jones University here is a choice. That is also
asking Bob Jones for an African American.
Also, can we just appreciate again with like the weird ick factor that's going on here? This is the second time that Jeanson has alluded to a student of a specific ethnicity, specifically investigating the genetics of their hit, like assuming that they're going to investigate like their specific like.
And then isn't that funny how Jeanson is the one that gets to focus on all of the Native Americans?
Right, but the East Asian student, well, I'm not working on that, but you can work on that, right? It's like...
He's like, I wouldn't work on that because I don't speak Chinese, but let me work on all these Native American...
Yeah, because he speaks all... Yeah, it's... Folks, it's weird. Like, it's weird. It's weird.
Yes, there's colonial French, there's English, there's all that, but there's languages within Africa, indigenous languages that might have some of these keys. So if you speak them, that may be a great way to help. So to answer the question about how can people help, there are these internships. Again, there's already opportunities that have opened up, and it's easier, I think, if I can go through a university where the professor knows you and you know them, but it doesn't have to be that way per se. But even if you're not a student per se, there's so many pieces of this puzzle. Hey, this document over here, I can't read it. I'm trying to learn Spanish now so I can get to Latin America and read what they said, and other documents, perhaps not yet in English, but surely there are accounts, maybe even still unwritten accounts in Africa, in the Pacific, if you speak those languages, to advance the ball, to line it up with the genetics. So I feel like it's open almost to anyone who is.
I really am dreading the day when the creationist interns are going out to Africa and Polynesia and trying to write down previously unwritten oral traditions specifically to try to have them match with their creationist genetics. That's what he was just talking about. That's a recipe for disaster. That actually is dangerous.
Also, there are people doing this work for real, like correctly, and it's leading to like really important academic output and revisions of our previous understanding of like the pattern of settlement in Polynesia, for example.
Yeah.
Right?
So
there are people doing this for real.
Please, Dr. Jeanson, do not send your interns, who don't even have to be students, do not send these interns to do this actually important work of documenting indigenous oral traditions. We do not want your interns anywhere near this work.
That's Grayson. That's just the scientific establishment trying to keep the young earthers out of the.
I don't even want sarcasm on this point, man. This is an important point.
I can't say we can always pay you. Students will pay you for summer internships, but anyway, there's lots of potential here, huge potential for people in all walks of life, but especially for young people, because you can make an entire career, a very exciting career, I think.
We just appreciate. Just pause for a second. One little thing. I don't want to make it a big thing, but can we just appreciate that he's like, by the way, we can't pay you. Like, this is gonna be unpaid. Good luck.
Yeah.
Like, just want to point that out there.
Yeah. By the way, you will be doing all this labor for us.
Unpaid internships are a scam. Get paid for your labor. Don't do an unpaid internship.
It's a lot of fun to make these discoveries that could make international headlines and rewrite the history that we learned or never learned, to write it anew. So, and there's ways to get in touch with me. I'm on multiple social media platforms. So Facebook, a lot of the other ones, smaller ones, Gab, MeWe, Parler, I think went extinct. But
what the fuck
Yeah,
are
Parler.
these?
Yeah, hey,
Are
hey,
these
Nate,
real?
why did Parler go extinct? Was
What
it
is MeWe?
was it because was it because it was a right wing scam?
Oh my
Yes.
God. Like, I
Oh
swear he's
man.
just making stuff up. Like, hey, Dan, if you want to reach me, I'm on Chim Cham, I'm on Swimmy Moons, I'm on Quim Quam.
There's ways to get in touch with me, even if you just email
I don't
our
listen to any of this.
let's move forward. There's more than I have time to do. So I'm quite happy to have ideas proposed. And really, the first internship I did 2 years ago, or 2 summers ago, was at the prompting of Bob Jones, and I had kind of poo-pooed that for a while. I didn't know how we'd do it, and it worked, and it was great, and I think beneficial to the student, beneficial to me, beneficial to the whole field and the question.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's fascinating research. And you have a series of videos on our website too, if people are interested to look at a little more back information on what you've already uncovered. And so I would recommend those to anybody who's interested in this as well. And this is awesome too, that you see that science confirms God's word and it's aligning with what you're researching. But I think also it's a wonderful opportunity to open the door for gospel conversations. And so I'm curious, throughout some of the research that you've done, have you experienced that?
I'd say if you look at the views,
Okay, well, I'm going to just call it here, actually, because the level of interest that I have for this question and Jeanson's answer is actually negative. So,
Yeah, he's talking about how he was, going to be a mission, and then he was too immature and didn't do it, and
yeah, I think we covered the important part, and they just summarized it really well for us here at the end, where basically Jeanson is willing to lie about the field and the science that he's trying to pass off like he represents in order to basically just push his religious agenda on a lay audience of followers who don't know any better.
There you go. That's what he's doing.
Just a reminder, go subscribe to Dr. Dan on Creation Myths. His channel is awesome. If you like my channel, you're going to like his channel too. So if you haven't subscribed, what rock are you living under? Go do that right now.
Don't insult your audience like that. They live under very nice rocks.
Okay,
as do
well,
mine.
Get out of your very nice rocks and go into the real world where we're debunking these creationist yahoos like every week. Dan's doing it every week. It's super impressive. Go check it out on his channel.
I don't want to miss a week. Don't.
It's really hard to do this weekly. I mean,
It's hard to do this.
You guys know
Really
I've
hard.
been trying to put out videos every week. I still try my best. I don't always succeed at that, but subscribe here too if you haven't. If you've made it all the way to this video and you haven't subscribed to this, then, like, actually you are living under a rock, and I will insult you. If you've made it this far and you're not subscribed, what is wrong with you? But enough insulting of my audience here. You guys know what to do, and as always, stay curious and keep learning. Until next time, thanks for joining us, Dr. Dan. Peace out.
Thanks, everybody.